I think, than anybody I can put a name to promote our sport.
The archer who owns all the world records, John Demmer III.
You know, the more difficult a thing is, the more important the mental game becomes.
I didn't eat any supper yet either. How about you guys? Did you guys eat yet?
I didn't eat
Oh,
that.
you know,
I got some crunch berries.
Oh,
yeah.
Grayson Parlow.
It's like me taking 3 or 4 years off your eyes just because I weakened that prescription in the shooting eye.
And don't put everything into my shot that I should, that I get a lot of drop on those heavy arrows. It's dropping all the way down. He said, well, you might want to think about going to a lighter arrow and string walking. And that's what got that started. So.
And people, right, there'd be barebow archers at nationals because that was the only USAT event that they were welcome to at that point. And when, you know, the barebow athletes would kind of question, like, when do we get barebow at all the USAT series, you know, sort of along those lines. And the pushback from whatever side you want to call it, right? The people that would push back against that, their reasoning was always somewhat flawed to me. Some of the venues, we do have limited space, so I can see there being some issues there. But if we want to look towards the growth of archery in general, like, we've got to come up with solutions for those quickly. Like, if archery hits a growth spurt right now and it gets, you know, we get 20% growth in the next year's USAT, like, that's a good problem to have to solve in my mind, right? If I'm US Archery, I'm looking at, like, well, if 20% more people, you know, even just if barebow grows 20% next year, right, at the USATs, that probably means the membership in general at US Archery is growing. I mean, not a full 20%, but right, more than those 20% of people that show up. And so, right, I just always push for more growth in archery in general. Just because I have stabilizers and a sight and a clicker doesn't mean everybody should, you know. So it's like, go out and shoot a bow and have fun. And right, I want more people to be able to experience a USAT event, because I think overall they're a lot of fun. Like, to me, it's kind of like going to camp, right? It's like this little, like, summer camp, and it's like all my friends, you know, that I see, like, whatever, 4 or 5 times a year, and get together, we hang out, right? Sometimes we'll go play mini golf, or, you know, go to Dave and Buster's or something like that after the events, and just have fun. And it's a cool experience. So you know, the more people that can experience that and develop a relationship within the archery community, I think will be better for archery in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we've been saying for forever, but we have just gotten, I don't know, I guess it's just this thing with people that they don't like change, and they don't like to accept that change is inevitable, and they want to hold on to, like, control. I don't know. It just, there's definitely been some people have absolute open arms in our circle within, you know, the tournaments and USA Archery and other formats and stuff, and, you know, and then there's others that just, man, they want to fight and claw and do whatever they can to avoid, you know, people get annoyed with barebow missing the target, and we're a little bit louder than some others, and you know, and stuff like that. And it's just, it's a little strange to me, you know, anything that can be done to grow, not just barebow. And I think the growth of barebow is only going to translate to bigger growth in other ways, and vice versa. You know, Did you see the submittal from World Archery for compound for the 2020? I think it was 2028 Olympics. Did you see that? Or was it 2028 or 2024? This was
It's 28. It's for Los Angeles. Yeah, I did see that. And
what's your thoughts on that? I don't mean to put you on the
what?
spot, but you know.
No, that's fine. I thought it was interesting. You know, the fact that they chose to go indoors seemed like logical, like because it needs to be different than recurve, like in a substantial way, right? For
Right.
them to consider it a whole separate sport, if you will.
Right.
So it's yeah. We will see what happens there, right? The IOC, the International Olympic Committee, will have their kind of way with it. I don't know how all that whole process works. I'm sure it's a highly political one.
Yeah, sure.
And I mean, some of it's just space-based, right? There's only X amount of athletes that can go to an Olympic Games, right? That number is not growing as much as the number of sports being added to the games is happening. So it's like if they add, 64 athletes, right? Say they, which would be small, to the games, well, that's 64 more athletes. You got to figure out how to house, feed, move around the venue, move around the village. The logistics that goes into such a huge event like that, I don't think most people, some people just going like, well, why don't they just put compound in the games? It's like,
It's just not easy. It's just not.
It's not that simple. There are, like I want to see it happen. Like, don't get me wrong, but like I can also see from the other aspect of like, it's an experience, being in the village, seeing like there's just rows of buses all going to different venues all day long. Like,
crazy. Yeah, so I guess they only allocate a certain amount of athletes for the Olympics, both winter and summer. And in order for a sport, so compound archery, for example, to be added, they have to make room. If they don't already have it, they have to make room for X amount of athletes to be added, which ultimately is going to mean if was it winter, 2028 winter? Olympics?
No, it's summer.
Is it summer? Okay.
28's Los Angeles. So that was the thing to me. Like, I don't know why they don't put it into winter, but that'd be a little weird, I guess.
I don't know. Would it be? I mean, it'd be an indoor sport. Yeah, I guess that is kind of weird. But at any rate, it means that somewhere along the lines, someone is not. There's got to be some justification for the request. I have to think.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
They wouldn't have made the request if there wasn't some reasonable or rational decision. Like,
yeah. So whether it gets in as like I forget, like a trial event, right? Where they just trial it in 28 and then they're kind of see if like it's going to continue on in the future. I imagine that's its best hope of getting into the program. My whole thing, when I saw that it was indoors, I was like, oh man, like, can you imagine the trials procedure, especially for the US men going, right? I don't know if I don't think that it'll be a team event. I thought it would be a mixed team. So, right, an individual and mixed team is what I thought I had read. It's been a few days now.
Yeah.
But so that means probably maybe only one person per gender per country. So like, I mean, can you just imagine the trials procedure we'd have to come up with for America's compound men?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
To see and like how close and how, I mean, at 18 meters, like, what do you do?
I don't know. I mean, unless you just base it off of, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the trials process is so extensive. So
I mean, the amount of arrows shot for recurve the Olympic Games is pretty substantial, right? The amount of scored arrows that goes into the whole trials procedure. to do that all at just 18 meters, and like where most people are regularly shooting 300, you know, because it'd be on a world archery face with a 23, right?
Yeah,
Because it's
right,
a world
right.
archery. So like right over however many thousands of arrows they want to decide goes into the trials procedure, and it still come down to like a half a point or so, you know, like yeah, that'd be way too nerve-wracking for me.
Well, it's all good. Well, I guess we'll just have to all sit back and see. I know a lot of people are like, oh,
Yep.
they should add Barebow. They should add Barebow, and they're like, oh, Barebow is gonna have a negative. Well, you're an Olympian, so do you think Barebow will have or men's recurve or Barebow will have a negative impact if compound is added to the Olympics? I don't think it will, personally. I think it'll have a negative impact on the growth of the other two disciplines if compound becomes an Olympic sport.
Like, I imagine so.
You think it'll have a negative impact on those two, on both disciplines, or just Olympic recurve?
I would bet more so Olympic recurve. Like right now, as far as I'm aware, at USAT registrations, Olympic recurve is pretty by and far the largest division.
Probably
a lot of that is because people have hopes and dreams of becoming an Olympian. Right. Is my guess. I don't know. Like, I started my archery journey a lot later in life than most probably do. Yeah. So, but right, if you're starting at a young age, it's probably that sort of Olympic dream. If you're going to get highly competitive, right? If you're just, I shoot archery and maybe I go to one USAT a year or something like that. Mm-hmm. What, you know, it's probably not going to affect those kids or people. But yeah, I imagine there'd be some drops in the recurve side, and the compound side would boost, you know. They'd at least go to where it's at least equal. You know,
which would be fine. I just think for overall purposes of growth of archery, I don't think it'll have a negative impact.
Not at all.
Yeah, I think it'll be the opposite. But
yeah, the total growth overall, I think, would be net positive, right? There would be more growth total. So
I think so too.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so small talk kind of got us sidetracked for the first couple of minutes, and I see there's people logging in, and they're on the live feed here. So everyone, welcome back to the Barebow Project. We were just BSing a little bit. We've had a conversation going on. I was like, I'm just gonna go live, Kevin. He's like, yeah, no, I don't care. So we just ran with it. But this will be episode 62 with our Team USA Paralympic men's recurve gold medalist, Mr. Kevin Mather. Kevin, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great. Having a blast.
I'm glad we ran into each other. So, low backstory. I go to San Diego, teach a Barebow seminar with the peeps, Lee Taylor and company from Lionheart Academy, and go to Chula Vista. This guy is there practicing indoors at the time, and just starts talking to all the Barebow people, and I'm like, I know you. And then he's like, well, I know you. I was just listening to your podcast with Dick Tone. I was like, get the heck out of here. So I'm not gonna lie, I was a little surprised when you threw that at me. You know, and we shot the shit for a little bit. You talked to our people from the seminar. And then I threw him a little challenge. I was like, dude, just take the stabilizer and sights off and just throw some arrows, Barebow style. It's like, all right, I'll do it at 70 meters, like 0 reservations, and just started banging away at 70 meters with nothing on his bow. And it was quite impressive. No joke. So, my friend, can you please tell everyone, let's give us a quick rundown of your most recent experience here from 2020. And let's start right away, like how this journey started for you it just getting into archery? Because I know you just kind of alluded to where you said you started archery late and then boom, a few years later, and here we are. So you are the 2020 Tokyo, right? Paralympic gold medalist. Are you
Correct.
Do we have a Paralympic gold medalist for the Team USA prior to you? Are you the first?
In recurve, you have to go back quite a ways. Andre Shelby shot, because we have compound in the Paralympics. Andre Shelby is the Rio champion, gold medalist. So yeah, we normally do okay, and these last two games we did better than okay. We brought home gold, so maybe in Paris we can bring home gold in recurve and compound. That would be phenomenal. So, or maybe a mixed team. Like, we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go to the beginning. Let's talk about your life getting into this archery thing, because I don't know if you've ever explained it or got into it anywhere. I know I've never heard the story. I want to know, like, how did archery come about for you later in life, and what drove you to pursue the Olympics?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I didn't live too far from Justin Hewish growing up.
Okay.
And I recall like watching him on the news when they did that whole bit of him like shooting across the street and through his garage and his backyard and all that. Like, I saw that and I thought that was really cool. I mean, that was what, 94. So I was I was like 12-ish, 11, 12.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I just thought it was cool, but there was no clubs near me that I was aware of. The closest range to me that I'm aware of was the Woodley range in Van Nuys. And that probably would have been like an hour and a half drive, for me, my family, whatever, if I wanted to get involved in that. And so there was just other sports that were more readily available. And, the internet hadn't quite taken off too much yet. So it wasn't like you could just, I'll find something cool, some local club. Yeah, I've been an athlete most of my life, right? I was the biggest thing was an endurance athlete. I was a runner, and then kind of hurt my feet training for a marathon, and still wanted to do endurance stuff. So I got into cycling to sort of give my feet a break. And then I was like, well, I can run and I can cycle, so I might as well learn how to swim and become a triathlete. And so that's kind of what I did.
Yeah.
I was training for an Ironman in 2009. I was out on a training ride on my bike with some other friends, and I got hit by a truck doing about 65 miles an hour, and that's how I became paralyzed.
How old were you then?
I was 26.
Okay.
So yeah, I turned 20. Yeah, I was 26. I turned 27 in the hospital in August that year. And then kind of figured out my life, how to be a person living in a wheelchair with paralysis and all that. Got back to work, got back to general life, daily stuff. 2011, one of my friends who was on that ride with me that day sort of challenged me to make a shot for Ironman Kona in 2012. And I thought he was an insane person when he first brought that up. And then it kind of started marinating in my head. And within a month after that, I did my first century ride on a hand cycle. And I was like, oh, maybe I can do this. It definitely wasn't fast and it didn't feel good the next day, but I could do it. And so I started training for Ironman, Kona 2012. And, you still have to qualify for it. It's not like anybody can go because it's their world championships. And so I qualified for it at Ironman Lubbock in Texas, or Ironman Texas in Lubbock, Texas. And then, 2012, I went to Ironman World Championships in Kona, Hawaii, and competed, got second place. and felt like I was going to die. So it was a super awesome thing to get checked off the list. Kind of along that way. This is a really roundabout way into archery, by the way.
It's fine, no worries.
I had started getting into alpine skiing. It's something I really enjoyed when I was walking around on this earth, and I didn't think I would love skiing again. I thought pushing around in the snow in a wheelchair doesn't sound like a fun idea. Like,
Yeah.
just being cold, like all the extra clothes you have to wear, like sitting in your wheelchair, it's like it's just funky. It's not fun feeling. It just seemed like a horrible idea to me. But finally, some of my friends talked me into coming into this adaptive camp at Mammoth Mountain, and like within, I don't know, the first half a day, I was like, well, I love skiing now. So all the other, you know, crap of having to deal with was worth the cost of ripping around on the mountain. So I started skiing a lot after Ironman. So right, late 2012 and into 2013 ski season. And just got comfortable, like independent skier, like could go just rip around the mountain by myself without fear of like eating crap and needing somebody to pick me up or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was out there in the US ski team, the Paris ski team was there, and I was like, there's really a lot of mono skiers here. What's going on? And you know, I run into the coach, and he's like, oh, you can come rip with us if you want. Like, maybe we can teach you some stuff, yada, yada. So I hang out with them for like 3 days. And then the coach is like, you know, we do a camp at Mount Hood in July. If you want to come out with that, it'd kind of be like a trial run to see if you would want to ski with the team. And I'm like, at that point, I was like, I don't really know. I was kind of going through a divorce, and life was a little messy. And so that was kind of the reasoning. Like, I told him no straight away, but then like as I got home like a month later, I'm like, my life's kind of messed up right now. Like, maybe sort of a fresh start sort of feeling wouldn't be the worst thing that could happen to me right now. So so I went to that camp and decided that, yeah, I'd be happy to join the team. And the end of 2013, I moved to Aspen, Colorado, where the beer flows like wine, and spent 5 years, you know, from, well, 4 years, 2013 to 2017, you know, I lived in Aspen and skied almost every day of my life for a while there. So while I was there, I got plugged in with Craig Hospital, which is a huge spinal cord rehab facility, a spinal cord and brain injury rehab facility in the Denver area. And I started volunteering there, you know, mentoring newly injured patients, you know, kind of showing them,
Wow.
like, hey, your life really, really sucks right now, but it's not going to suck this bad for that long. So, right, I would bring in my mono ski or my mountain bike, and or just, you know, sharing like videos and stories and like tips and tricks on how to do things easier and more efficiently. Right, like just showing people like that I drive a normal truck, like, right, I drive a Ram 1500, and, you know, everybody's like, oh, I'm gonna have to drive a minivan with a ramp and stuff like that. I'm like, no, like, you can, like, you know, for most people, obviously some people, if you have a higher injury, like, be difficult, but you know, just showing them it's not as bad. Trust me, it's not good, but you can still do awesome stuff. And that's how I got into archery. Was I was volunteering there. Another volunteer had his bow with him, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna go rip some arrows after this, like, you want to come to this range with me? And I'm like, sure, sounds fun to me. Right, and just started shooting with, you know, a little like Samick Sage rental bow, or, you know, something along those lines, and just kind of shooting. And like, I thought I absolutely sucked, right? Because he's shooting a compound, not like a full-on target compound, but,
yeah,
you know, kind of like in between a hunting and target compound is kind of what he was shooting. So he's shooting like, I don't know, probably like 292 to 298 games. And I'm sitting here trying just to keep things on paper at 18 meters, right? I'm like, man, I suck at this so much. And I had no clue, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm shooting a Barebow, like, that's also not like a great fit for me, like, because it's
not
pretty
low,
short.
low end. Even it doesn't. Yeah, low end beginner entry type stuff. Yeah,
with like bent old arrows and stuff like that, you know. And I'm just like,
range arrows.
yeah, I'm like, man, I suck at this. He's like, no, dude, you're doing really, really good for your first day. I'm like, really? And I'm like, look at that down there. And he's like, yeah, that's good. And I'm like, sure thing. And then so I kind of just got the bug, you know. I every time I'd come down and volunteer, we'd go shoot, and we kind of like had a handicap system, right, where it'd be like, okay, I'd be like, if I was 30 points down from him, then I won, or you know, whatever it was, and then whoever lost was buying dinner. And just did that. Like I kind of got the bug enough to where I wanted to buy my own equipment. I found a used Ion X at the local shop out here that was just on consignment or something. Got a killer deal on it. Had no idea what sort of pound limbs to order, so I just guessed and ordered some limbs off Lancaster, and those came, and I shot that for a little while, and then I broke my middle finger on my left hand, and I'm left-handed, so that was my draw hand, and I couldn't bend it like that. Like, it was bad. I like dislocated the the main knuckle there, right? And I was like, well, probably not shooting archery ever, like at least left-handed and recurve. I'm like, maybe I could go to compound or something. And I was still living in Aspen at this point, so I didn't really care. Like, archery was just a fun thing for me.
Right.
And so I went to like a hand surgeon, and he's like, it's pretty messed up, but I think it's gonna be okay. He gave me a bunch of like physical therapy stuff to do, and it took like a year for me to rehab my finger. And I remember he was to have me like flex it and stretch it all the time. And so like anytime I was at like a stoplight in my truck, like I would just be doing my little routine. And like one time I was doing it, and like that knuckle like cracked, like a normal like good knuckle pop, you know. And I was like, ooh, maybe it's good enough I could try shooting archery. Was like my first thought. And so I started shooting again after that, and that was 2017. So I originally started shooting in like 2016 or like end of 2015. Shot for like 3 months, broke my finger, and then it took like a year. So it was like 2017 when I started shooting again. And like that's when I was like, okay, in my mind, I was gonna be a 2-sport athlete. I was gonna shoot archery in the summer, keep skiing in the winter, and just kind of go back and forth, and like overlap train, you know, throughout the seasons. But yeah, I shot my first outdoor tournament in June of 2017, and I still have this scorecard on my fridge. I shot a 414.
What'd you say? That was outdoor?
Yeah.
Outdoor, 72 arrow round. Okay.
Yep, 72 arrows, 414 with, I mean, I forget, not a ton of misses, but definitely not zero. And like there was trials for world championships that year. And so my coach, I was working with Chris Duro out here in Colorado, and he's like, well, you got to go shoot that. And I'm like, you see the score, bud? Like, we ain't going. And so he's like, well, let's at least try. I'm like, okay. Like, oh, and then he kept telling me, he's like, well, what's it going to take to get you to commit to archery and sort of forget about that ski racing idea you got there? And like, I wasn't having it. I love skiing so much. I'm like, that's not an option really. And then finally, like as I started progressing, like I was like seeing that archery might be a thing I'm more successful at. And so then I'm like, well, if I make this world team, I'll quit skiing. Like that'll be big enough, right, to be able to make a world team that quick.
Yeah.
And
that's incredible.
Yeah. So then I go out and I shoot the trials out in Salt Lake City. Like it was insanely hot. Like, and that field's turf, right? And like the turf just makes it hotter. And like I yeah, I came in third, like barely came in third, but I tell so Eric Bennett is now a good friend and teammate of mine, and I tell him it's his fault that I'm this deep in archery because he took that year off, more or less, right? He had Eric works full time as a like physics teacher, more or less, and high school physics teacher, and so it's a lot of work for him to go. He went to the Rio games, and right, that's pretty rough on his lifestyle, right?
Sure.
To be able to maintain
Absolutely.
the training, all that. So he took 2017 off. If he didn't, I wouldn't have made that team, is pretty much what would have happened, and I wouldn't have been fully committed to archery. So it's kind of his fault that I'm all the way committed to the archery. But yeah, that was my first. I mean, that might have been my first U.S. archery event, because I did not shoot Arizona Cup that year, and I don't think I didn't shoot Gator Cup that year either. So you
My
got
dog.
ghosts in there.
It's my dog. No, it's my dog. It's okay.
I shot that. I shot trials, and then the next event was the Windy Nationals in Indiana. And yeah, that was so yeah, I believe that trials was my first like legitimate tournament. And
Crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. We went, I didn't shoot so hot individually there. I qualified all right, and I think I went out my first match, like it was close, but I went out. And then but team rounds, I was able to put 2 arrows together per end, apparently, and we went to the gold medal match, and we lost to Russia on the gold. So
wow.
It was my first international event, to walk away with a silver.
After only shooting archery for what were you, a year? Not even a year?
Yeah, somewhere around there, depending on when you say it started, because of break my finger and taking that hiatus there.
Right.
Somewhere around there. Yeah, it was pretty awesome. Lots of that like just motivated me to want to get better, right?
Nice.
So
what did that journey look like then, to want to get better? What was your, where did you start? How did that progress? Who were you working with, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. So over the years, I wanting to learn more and know, like, right at some point I knew I didn't really have goals when I went to that first world championships. I was just like, I'm going to shoot archery, and whatever happens. And then in 2018, I worked with Mel Nichols a bit, and he suggested I get some sort of mental game program ideas going. So then I went and worked with Troy down at Mental Management, and darn dogs, man. And so I worked with them 2018, sort of got things set up, like established some goals and things I really wanted to accomplish in archery. And then basically from there, that's when I started really getting after it, because I am an all or nothing kind of person.
Yeah, at some point in time, that comment would have come up, because everything you've done involves an extreme amount of commitment, whether it's the skiing, the triathlete, it's all, I mean, I guess it is extreme stuff, but the level of commitment to be good, let alone very good, like you were doing and like those like races and taking everything it takes to take care of your feet and your recovery, and like there's so many facets to being good at those items. So the fact that you come to love archery and then realize like what the commitment is to be a gold medalist. Like, it's no surprise to me after like learning that background that you eventually became a gold medalist, because it's in your nature. Like, you can tell that it's something like you have a driving force to continue to want to get better until maybe something new comes along. I don't know, but like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I appreciate that. You know, it's yeah, it took some time to figure out how big of goals I could set in archery, right? And even when I was setting them, there's still goals I have that I'm like, oh, that's gonna take so much work, right? I believe the hardest goal, and if Eric listens to this, he'll appreciate it. The hardest goal I have is I want to have all of the para records, right? World archery records for para men recurve all at the same time. Like, right? I want to pull up that web page and it just be Kevin's face. The hardest record to beat, at least in my mind, is Eric Bennett's indoor 18-meter 600 rounds score, which is like a 594.
Wow.
I think it better be 4, because if not, it's a 596, and that's really, really tight.
I could probably look that up real quick, but anyways,
yeah,
that's smoking, man.
Oh yeah, it's
holy crap.
It's wild, right? Just sitting there lobbing arrows. Right, he's a mouth tab shooter,
yeah,
and he can't. I think he can shoot a 19 is the biggest arrow he can get to tune out of his bow. Right, he doesn't shoot a lot of. You don't really want to shoot a ton of pounds when you're pulling it back with your teeth. So yeah, that one's pretty smoking.
Eric Bennett 592.
92. Oh, good. I got 2 extra whole points.
2 extra whole points. He set that in 2015.
Yeah.
That is just so impressive.
Yeah, and he did it. I thought he did it at Indoor Nationals, wherever it was shot that year in New Mexico or something by him. But yeah, that's hot. So the rest of them are like, so I have all the FIDA ones. I have all 5 FIDA ones.
Okay.
The double 72 outdoors, I think, is like obtainable. It just takes 2 kind of calmer days and to be shooting like.
Yeah, there is a lot of variable in the outdoor, and like the outdoor rounds.
Yeah, you know, the single 72, it's like in the like 665 or something like that right now. So that's is definitely not unobtainable. Like, I've shot scores like that in practice when I'm really training well.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, and the 25-meter indoor round, I think, is very breakable. So, you know, stuff like that, like, right, Paralympic, when I was setting my goals, right, Paralympic gold medal was on that list. And right, when you set goals that large, it comes down to one day. And so if I were to set that and say I'm only shooting Tokyo and then I'm done, like, that would be unrealistic, right? At least in my mind, it's like, are you really, how much does that goal matter to you if you're only going to give it 1 attempt? So my plan is at least shooting through Los Angeles. So I would have Tokyo, Paris, and Los Angeles. So 3 attempts at that was what I was giving myself. I'm very pleased to have done it on the first one, because now there's not that big pressure on me to, right, if we got to LA and I hadn't even podiumed, I would be like, oh man, this one's really got to go well.
Sure.
So
while the pressure for the first one isn't there, it's I've said this a million times. it's easier to get to the number one spot. It's a hell of a lot harder to maintain it because it takes
Absolutely.
higher level of commitment and training. And but go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. Like, so I realized that even my first like real international season was 2018. So we have a world event in Dubai. That's a pretty large tournament.
Yeah.
That year I went to that and I won that. And I was not the dude to win that. Right. I qualified kind of middle of the pack. I think some of that was helpful. Like, I wasn't a great archer yet. Like, I was pretty good, but I was yarding back a lot of weight, and I had some fast arrows, and we had some wind that helped me out. That worked out. I went straight from there to the Mexican Grand Prix. Mexican Grand Prix is fun because, at least back then, we'll see what happens in the coming years here. Now that they've changed the timing, but I was able to shoot both lines, just like at USAT. So I'm able to shoot as a para athlete and also as a senior athlete, senior male. So I got to shoot both eliminations. I got to shoot with the able-bodied athletes, and I went to the quarterfinals, not the semis, as an able-bodied athlete.
Oh,
right.
Nice.
And then and one of my friends, another American, was the guy who knocked me out. It came to a 1 arrow shoot off, and it was like an inch away from each other, and he was tighter. So right, that was super fun. But on the para side of things, at that tournament, there's less competition within the Americas. So I was kind of like the guy, right? I probably qualified 30 points higher than the next guy.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like I was expected to win. And that gold medal match was like tighter than the Dubai one, because it was just like this pressure of like, yeah, dude, you should be winning right now. Why aren't you? And I hadn't really developed a mental game at that point. So it was just kind of like, my environment was kind of affecting me, right, more than it ought to. So that
gets a lot of people. That gets a lot of people in all facets of the game and all levels, is that environment. And it can simply be the environment of standing on a shooting line. It just gets people. And, and that this may end up being a segue into the discussion that we had out in San Diego, of like, where do you need to put your brain in those moments? Like, what are the things that you need to do? I mean, we can keep going. It seems appropriate because you like, why don't you speak to that point of where does your brain go now in these, as Larry Wise states, in moments of high personal value? Where does your brain go in those moments? I mean, you're an international athlete. You've competed at the highest level you possibly can at this point. Where does your brain go in those moments?
It adapts to where it needs to go. And that's like right throughout my shot cycle, like right when I start drawing back my bow, I have very specific thoughts and things I'm looking to feel when I hit, like, right. And it's not, you could tell when somebody's like new to archery, right? Or if they haven't blended it yet, right? It's like, right. If they look like a robot when they're shooting, right? If it's kind of like, oh yeah, I do, like, right. If they're using, the national archery, NRS, whatever.
NTS, yeah.
NTS, there we go. NRS natural ranking system. There's too many acronyms, right? They're like, oh, okay, so here's set up, load, anchor, like, right? And this is janky looking, like, which is like a great way to, like, those are all just words to talk about the part of the shot we're at, right? And it's like, but those should be blended, right? It should be like when an artist like blend some like colored pencils together, right? And they just integrate it, and you're like, oh, I can't tell exactly where green ends and blue starts. Like it's this. And so like, that's my shot. So it's not like I'm thinking about every little micro step. But in between, right? So this is an example of me adapting to me controlling my environment and not letting it control me. When we were at Tokyo, even while we were practicing, there'd be other athletes around on the practice range, and I'd be sitting there shooting, and I'm like I'm feeling good, things are great, and like somebody would call out another archer's arrow, say they like shanked one, right? And it's like, oh, 6. And like, and if I'm at full draw, like my next shot, like it maybe wasn't a 6, but it wasn't a 10, you know, it was like out there. And I'm like, well, that's not good. Because when you're at the Olympics and Paralympics, every turn or every match you shoot is in the finals venue, right? It's not like you get down to semifinals and then you do that. Like, no, every single match is in the finals venue. You will have an announcer announcing every arrow, right? It is the whole deal, right? So I was like, well, this isn't good if anything gets announced, like, right, if your head's clear and something gets put in there, right, like I don't want the word 6 or 5 to be in my head when I'm about to draw on my next arrow. So while I was in the finals venue, like when it was time to shoot archery, like I would shoot, if I was shooting first, I'd shoot my first arrow, and then like looking at the wind and whatever I was deciding on, wherever my next aim point was, I was planning on it being, I was just chanting that in my head and even slightly out loud, like, and I'm closing my eyes and I'm focusing, like I'm visualizing like my aim point on the target. When my opponent's clicker would break, that's when my shot in my mind would break, and I'd see that arrow go directly at that aim point, right? And then like I didn't even hear there's a buzzer that goes off in between, like when they shoot and then you go to shoot, like I didn't even hear that buzzer. Like my arrow hitting the target in my mind in the 10 ring was my cue to start shooting. So then I would open my eyes and try to recreate the same thing I just saw.
That's impressive.
So, right, because there was times where like my opponent shanked one, right?
Yeah.
And that could be where your life falls apart, because it's like, oh, they just shot like a 7. And then you're like, oh, let me show you how to shoot a 6, you know, like,
gosh, it's so true.
Yeah. Oftentimes in those moments, it's really not falling apart, is, you know, and this happens World Cups, you know, Olympics, Paralympics, like, you know, you'll see it where it's like the scores shot to get there are really big, and then all of a sudden on that final stage, sometimes it's not the best performances. It's just who held it together the best. Or who guessed the win best, depending on the situation. But you know, my experience, it wasn't so much wind, like there was a little breeze here and there, like enough to move aim points, but it was rain. Like it was one match, it's dumping rain. I mean, even end to end, where it's just pouring rain and then just kind of a light sprinkle. And then, right, you'd come out to your next match and it's dry, like not the ground dry, but it's, the air's dry. And so you're like, you'd have to come out and your first arrow, you'd have to guess, how high do I aim? You know, like, do I aim, you know, a 12 o'clock 8, you know, like, because I'm not just yarding on my sight, like guessing. So I knew if I aimed off, you know, up and down, you know, held over, I guess. And then I can at least control it with more precision. So
yeah,
it was.
So now that you have been down this road, I know you've been traveling. You shot. Did you shoot all the USATs to date?
This season, yeah.
Okay. Are you shooting senior or are you shooting para?
When we register, we get thrown into both. So.
Oh, you do. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you finding now that you've got this seasoned competition callus built up? Because in retrospect, you're still a relatively newish shooter, I not newish by I'm not saying that in regards to your competition experience. It's a little bit of a different dynamic for your experience, but are you finding that you're building a callus or maybe a level of tolerance to those moments now that you've been involved and you're shooting more competitions, shooting against more and more a higher level of competition, being in that senior able body class? That's got to actually probably help more than anything.
Yeah.
Is that stuff making you better, making you more confident?
I think so. I mean, I've kind of treated this year as kind of a cruise control year. Again, since I'm an all or nothing sort of person for Tokyo, with COVID interrupting things, like I was on a path of training and seriousness, and then COVID hit and we're like, oh, our trials got postponed like a year more or less, like, right. And so I kind of took off that year. I was like, I can't train at this level for an extra year. I will go insane. So I still shot archery, but I got out my compound and I started, I shot a lot of like 3D and stuff like that. I shot nationals in 2020. I shot it recurve and compound. Had a blast doing that. I never really knew what target panic was until I started shooting compound. Especially when I shot it with like a 6x scope, I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what target panic feels like. Okay. Now I know. But so I just had fun. And again, this year, right when I got into Tokyo and it was happening and trials were happening, I really cut back on sort of like any drinking, or I cut caffeine out of my life, like zero.
Cold turkey.
I'm not a huge coffee guy, but I do like sodas a lot. And so cut all the Cokes out of my life, and no coffee, no. It was a little rough like the first 2 or 3 weeks, but then after that I was like, I was actually in Florida, and Zach Garrett was rooming with me, and we kind of had this like 2-bedroom sort of hotel set up, and like he's out in the like kitchen sort of area, and I came out of the bedroom, I'm like, dude, I had a dream last night. And he's like, nah, man, those don't exist. That's not real. Because he's fueled by caffeine, right? He's like a coder guy. So I'm like, no, actually, if you get off caffeine for like a month or so, like you can actually have dreams. Because I was just so amped on caffeine, like not knowing it, that I had never slept deep enough to have a dream that I remembered. It was wild experience for me.
That's dude, I
right?
drink so much coffee. I drink so much coffee. Probably way more than I should. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I should try that. I should try that. No, it's not awesome. It's terrible. I should try that. I'll give it up. I'll give it up right before, like a month out from nationals here shortly, I guess.
It's gonna be a rough month for you. So
maybe not. Maybe I'll start now. Maybe.
Yeah. I was gonna say you might give it like 6 weeks if you're planning to peak for nationals, because you just might be still grumpy by the time if you did it 4 weeks out. But right, so I went, all out for Tokyo, and then so I'm kind of relaxing now, right? I still shoot and stuff like that, but I'm not shooting 300-400 arrows a day, any of that stuff. If I get 2 to 250 in, I'm like, that's a big day for me now. So right, I'm not hoping to hit the best scores in the world this year. I always have the mindset of I'm there to compete. Like, my qualifying hasn't been amazing. I've had some great matches at SoCal. I got to shoot against Justin Hewish it was our second match.
That's funny. And, Justin commented. He's I think he's watching right now.
What's up, Justin?
That's cool. You got to shoot against Justin. He's an old friend of mine. He's a good dude.
Yeah, he's a great dude, and I'm loving all those pictures he's posting from the games. And I'm like, dude, he didn't age at all. He looks exactly like that. but yeah, it came down to a 1 arrow shoot off. So it was
That's awesome.
it was a blast. Like he got me, and I mean, that was just so much fun for me to do that. Like that was like this like sort of dream moment come true. I'm like, I never shot against him before. That was like the first time. So it was I was really stoked for that. But yeah, I'm actually leaving for Czech Republic on Thursday. We have an international event. So I before we got on here, I was out tuning a backup bow, and really been been working with the Whiffler plunger a good amount, and trying to I've always thought it was a good idea, and I just never put aside time to really get to know it, you know. The biter I'd shot since I'd started shooting, so I kind of know where it wanted to live, like, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, this is your home, plunger. Like, you know where your home is. And shooting a Whiffler, because of how that thing ramps up like exponentially on the plunger tension, it's like I just didn't know where to start it out. And I was shooting at my house here. I can shoot at like 40, 45 meters. And so I was shooting, and I think I got that bow tuned pretty decently well. I was shooting some nice groups. So that's kind of this year. I'm using this year to like tinker with stuff too. Like I've got different grips. You know, I have my grip that I shoot. And that's what I shot at the games and everything. And I've shot that more or less since 2018. But I probably have like 50 grips.
Oh, wow.
You know, ones I bought and ones I've made. And I just like, I'm a tinkerer, right? I was a machinist at one point in my life. So I really, you know, it's not hard for me to think of something and like try to create it. And so, yeah, it's a wild obsession I have, unfortunately. But I'm trying out the Brady grip right now, you know, the Jaeger Brady grip.
Shout out to Paul. He's a sponsor of the podcast.
Yeah, good dude. And so when I first got that, I put it on my bow and I like grabbed it, and I'm like, this feels real funky. Cause it's very narrow and angled compared to my grip. But then I like, when I actually shot it, I was like, oh, that feels pretty good actually. So, yeah, I shot that in Florida for the first time, and I didn't realize it had sort of changed my draw length. Like at blank bay at home, I was like, oh yeah, that feels great. Yeah. And then I get the outdoor shooting, and I'm like, man, I can't get through my clicker. And like, my clicker's pretty far out to begin with. So like, I didn't have much room to move it out. And then I'm like, struggle busting getting through the clicker, and just had a rough tournament. And like, I didn't realize it, you know? So that's why you mess with equipment in years where it doesn't matter, folks, kids, everybody.
or off seasons when it doesn't matter. Now, I mean, I've watched Demmer on numerous occasions mess with equipment literally like right during the tournament with zero concern over what happens or how. I mean, but he also shoots with a different level of confidence with making those adjustments on the fly. Like very few people can make those adjustments that John does in the mix. And
sure.
And whether he comes out like with flying colors or nosedives, the one thing that that is a common denominator, it doesn't care either way. I mean, he's not going to be like happy, but he doesn't care. Like, it doesn't affect him, because he's just, he realizes, like, you know, I'm not going to think about an arrow that I haven't shot yet. And I'm not going to think about an arrow that I shot previously. I'm just going to take care of business right now. And he's such, you know, he has that ability to do that in Barebow. For the rest of us out there, like right now, I'm tinkering, you know, new arrows, playing with a plunger, a change in the plunger. I'm shooting a Whiffler as well. And you know, Barebow is just such a finicky sport, though. Like, just because we don't have the accessories, we don't have the sight, we don't have all that stuff. Which you found out, you know, you got to play. You didn't get to aim. You weren't aiming tip of the arrow. You're aiming in a different fashion, but it definitely has its like quirks that you tune your bow to respond to your shot, the way you anchor, your head position, because it changes everything so drastically.
Oh,
But
sure. Well, I mean, we do that, believe it or not, we do that too, right? Like the way I anchor is very different than the way like Brady and Jack anchor, right? Like I have a pretty long jaw, like, right, where like they don't as much have like a pronounced jawline or whatever you want to say it. So like they can anchor back over here, right? In mine, like if I was there, because I can't turn my head like this much, like just like the way I sit in my chair and the way my body position has to be, like I can't turn my head that much. I'd be shooting like through my chin. So like I'm anchored like more or less out front. But I'm still able to achieve alignment in that position. So but like, right, like there's different face pressures, there's different like, right, if you look at Jacob Wookie's, like the shelf he shoots on his tab, I'm like, dude, what is that? He's like, that's just what I shoot. And I'm like, how? Like, right, so it's all like all that little stuff, like how much where your finger pressures at on your draw hand, right? Like it has taken me, I still to this day, if I'm working on something, it is working on drawing the bow with my top finger. Like I often will like come to anchor, if the clickers, like if I stop moving my shot and I'm stuck, my body naturally wants to start grabbing the hell out of the string with my ring finger.
yeah,
And that's like, that's not a good way to let go of something when you're trying to clinch onto it. So, you know, that's one thing I'm still working on, is like really just setting that hook on my top finger and like really just driving with my back and letting the hand just be where it is. And like when I do that, my shots break so much more crisp and clean. I'm like, oh, maybe I should just do that every time. That'd be cool.
say can you say that again, but say it more specifically about your shot? Because that, like I've caught myself saying almost that exact phrase to shooters that I coach. Say that again. Well, about you know, leaving your hand and just letting that string pull through your fingers. So like, how can you describe that moment a little bit more detail?
Sure. Well, it's almost like I have to imagine it, because in the moment I don't even know what happens. So right, I am focused, and this is again with the benefit of a clicker, but if I were to shoot Barebow, I would shoot a shot triggering mechanism.
You would.
So I set my hook pressure right intentionally, right, knowing that when I start drawing the bow, tension will be added to my middle and ring finger.
Sure.
Right, like as the string angles, like that's going to happen. So I try to envision drawing the bow with my top finger only, right?
Interesting.
And right, I know I'm doing well if I can like get the anchor and kind of wiggle my ring finger a little bit. I'm like, oh yeah, that's just kind of along for the ride.
Yep.
Like the middle finger takes up a good amount of slack, but like if I can
Butch Johnson-esque hook.
Yeah, I'm not that crazy. I'm not like, all right, we don't need that finger. But I focus on the tension on that top finger, and to me that really helps me engage my back. Because again, let me try to move over a little bit. If I'm pulling with my top finger, my arm's going to be more or less here, right? If I start pulling with that bottom finger, it really promotes that. Right. And now we're pulling at this angle. Like in my mind, again, I'm no physics professor, but if I want things to go well and me impart the less amount of crappy movement on an arrow, I want my hand to go exactly away from the arrow as the arrow's going that way.
Yes.
If I'm doing this, like I have to be imparting like this force on the arrow.
Sure.
And it's probably going to be less consistent. So I focus on that top finger and I'm at anchor, and I just focus on moving my hand by moving my back. Like, right, I'm not squeezing in here, because like that's, again, if you're adding tension here through the shot and then also in the clicker, then you have to force a release, like pluck, I don't know.
Sure.
Like I call it in my mind, I call it a let go versus a release, right? Sure. It's like when I'm here and this just happens, like that's just releasing tension.
Yeah.
When I'm here and I do that, it's like I'm actively letting go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just focusing. I try to focus on building tension that needs to be built in the shot. And if I'm trying to be as lazy as possible. Like where there needs to not be tension, I don't put it there.
Yeah, that's great stuff, man.
Um,
There's carryover. There's 100%
Yeah.
carryover, in my opinion, of Barebow with everything that you're saying, with exception to the clicker and maybe even the hook a little bit, because we're 3 under, we don't have that squared string angle from above to below the knock. You know what I mean? We're 3 under and stuff. So there might be some finger pressure changes there, but it's nothing incredible. But no, that's why I wanted you to elaborate on it, because I think, like barebow archers, the vast majority of new barebow archers specifically, I should say, like we really complicate the archery shot. And I think we talked about it a little bit when we were standing in our little huddle there at the training center. Like I try to emphasize to people, like, let the bow do the work. Like, don't get in the way of the bow. The bow's going to shoot that arrow perfect every time, providing you are just the facilitator to the shot. So make your shot process and your form, make everything as repeatable as possible, almost as simple as possible. Don't get in the way of the bow. And like people are trying to do all this extra stuff, these big like dynamic bow arms and big huge releases, and they're and it's sometimes like less is more. And just the way you said it, you could tell like it's kind of the same principle. It's probably pretty much the same, just maybe a little bit more, probably a little bit more dynamic shot to it, because of the fact that you have a clicker, and that clicker gives you a signal that it takes not the guessing game, but it takes a little bit of the necessary determination out of the conscious mind staying in the shot so much longer, like it does in barebow. That it allows you to just finish the shot strong, and you're going to be repeatable. Before we go further, John Winker made a comment. I don't know if you know John. He's a owner at First Flight Archery in Raleigh, North Carolina, USA team Barebow 3D member. He's a good dude. But he put, I heard the para team score requirements are so high that it'll be nearly impossible to field a full team going forward. Is that true? If yes, how does that happen?
I think he's probably talking about women. I don't
know.
Yeah. I mean, he'd have to elaborate there. So we have like certain standards we set to make the team, right? Because there's not like 50 people trying to make the team, right? So especially for some divisions, right? Compound men, like things are fairly competitive, where that kind of just sorts itself out, especially for the top 3, right? For like I've got to watch like what sort of rabbit hole I go down here without trying to like be offensive to people, but like compound women right now in the US for like para archery, like the scores that we have set would land you internationally, right? The score we have set to make the team would have you shoot about mid-pack internationally.
Okay.
Right. So that's just what it is. Right. It's like a 6. I'm going to miss the number, 662 in that neighborhood.
Okay.
Right. So, right. The compound women's world record is like in the 690s. Right. Like maybe 695 plus, like it's up there. Right. So, it's like trying to bridge that gap. And like once we made those scores, and I don't set those, like, right, we talk about things. I'm on the para council, but right, when George Riles was our coach, like that's kind of when we reevaluated, like the scores were kind of like mismatched all over the place, and then we looked at it and sort of came up with a standard, like, okay, you need to shoot within the 60th percentile of your division internationally, and that's going to be the score, like across everything, across men, women, recurve, compound, like that's just the score. So I think a lot of the women have like stepped up their game because of that. And it's kind of cool. Like, right, we had a new national record at SoCal, right? Martha Chavez shot that. So I'm like,
yeah.
Awesome. Like they're working to meet those standards, right? And so that's we also have a program now where it's like, if you shoot there's a MQS to go to the Paralympics, right? That World Archery sets, right? Because they don't want some people going there and like shooting the Jumbotron, right? So so if you hit that score, right, for US Archery, like you will have 2 years of like ability to go to camps and international events and it's kind of like a bridge, right? Where it's like, okay, say if you're a new archer and you start getting, and then you hit that score, well, now you'll open up a new level of support and you have 2 years to be able to hit the actual team score, right? So I get his question and all that, and we're working on it, right? It's probably not a perfect system, but those are our thoughts and ideas.
Yeah.
If people have better thoughts and ideas, feel free to contact me.
Yeah, share them. Yeah, I mean, there's so many changes coming and changes just with the Barebow stuff and the USAT stuff. There was, so many opinions, and you're not going to make everybody happy, and maybe you don't get it right the first time. People don't be so polarized on those topics and just offer suggestions or step up and try to help. And maybe you can maybe you can help move things along in a positive light. I didn't realize you were involved in all of that other stuff. And maybe in my own admission, I didn't realize there was that much other stuff. Like the athletes were involved in these other these meetings and other topics and things in relation to qualifications and committees. And like, I don't know if people realize how much is actually involved in that and how important that aspect is. And that's like behind closed doors stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The athlete council, right? The reps, I know Paige Pierce is a rep, Brady's a rep. Leah Coriel is actually a rep, even though she's a para athlete. She is the able-bodied rep because of how the voting worked and stuff. Right, these people put in like lots of time and effort to like represent athletes to US Archery, right, is kind of their role. And right, it's on, like, you can go to the US Archery website, you can look up, okay, who's my athlete rep, like, okay, I'm a compound shooter, like I'm gonna go talk to Paige, right?
Yeah.
I'm a recurve shooter, I'm gonna go talk to Brady. Like if I'm a para recurve shooter, like you can talk to me or Eric Bennett, right, yada yada.
I don't think we have any Barebow reps.
I don't think you do either. And it's something that you might open up that conversation with. I don't know how that process gets started, like through right, there's other things that mandate what we need because of the US OPC is involved with things. But like as Barebow grows, like I don't see you guys. I think it'd be a good idea if there was at least one Barebow archer that could be right. John Demers, he's got extra time on his hands. So
John's got all kinds. Well, between fishing and and fishing. No, he probably doesn't have that much time on his hands. But I mean, I think there's other people. I think Robbie Weisinger would be a good one for that.
Robbie's a great guy.
Young guy, super.
Or Matty Yaka even.
Or Matty. I mean, but I look at it from that senior class representation. No offense to Matty. I'm just saying Robbie's going to be in that senior class a lot longer than myself, longer than Matt, longer than somebody like Robbie, in my opinion, would be a good representation of Barebow in general. So USA Archery, Rod Metzer. I mean, I know those guys probably aren't watching this podcast, but like that would be something for them to consider for sure.
So what I would do is I would bring that up at the meeting at nationals, right? I forget what it's called, but when all the athletes are able to, I don't know if they're doing it virtually this year or if they're going to do it in person. I would imagine they do it in person.
Never been invited to that one.
It's in an email that goes out when you register for nationals.
I don't look at those emails. I probably
that's not their fault.
You're right. No, you're right. But it's not. Is that?
Do you need a personal handshake from Rod Menzer to show up?
No, no. I would.
I mean, because I've shown up to all of them.
Do you really?
Yeah, it's important to me.
Yeah, I'm. You know, you're schooling me on it right now, Kevin, and I kind of feel like there's more of a responsibility to go to it now. So I'm not. I don't know if I ever saw that in the email that goes out before nationals.
Yeah, I can send it to you so that way you're aware of it and you can broadcast it to the Barebow Nation, right? Like it's
sure.
I think there's people that want to get involved and they don't know how. And that
might be where I was going with that is like for Barebow purposes specifically. I don't know if that's something that's been in the forefront of, hey, we want someone from Barebow to come and be at this meeting and let's talk, you know, or be present or represented. Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Like especially things like, there's stuff that needs to be done, like, right, for your guys' trials procedure, right? For like, you know, world games or like outdoor fields, stuff like that. Like who is signing off that your trials procedures are acceptable on the athlete side of things, right? I don't know that answer. They could be shopping it around to people, and I don't pay attention to Barebow, like the rules and stipulations there, because I don't compete in it. Like I'm very well versed on what my trials procedures are like, and right, do we need to adjust them next round, right? Do we need to adjust the bonus points? Do we need to change the timing? You know, and I try my best to not look at it selfishly. I try to look at it as like, what is going to be the best way to determine the best athletes to go. And, you know, having a couple, you know, representatives, like we bounce things off each other. Like I thought, you know, for the Pan American Games, right, which is kind of like a continental Olympics. Yeah. Right, we'll be selecting our team for that next year, and I really wanted to change the bonus points in a way. And you know, one of my fellow representatives was like, you know, if you do that, like we're only sending one athlete per division. He's like, if you do that, like, and that person wins, and then they get these extra bonus points, like, so whoever lights it up in qualifying on those 2 rounds is gonna be the person. And like, then I did all the math and backed it out, and I was like, oh yeah, he's right. Like, and then we didn't change it. So a whole bunch of stuff like that goes on behind, you know, not necessarily closed doors, but like, right, the people that decide to run, like when they're selecting athlete representatives, there was only like 4 or 5 people that ran for it. So, you know, out of however many hundreds of people shoot these things. So, you know, it is a job. It is like, it requires effort and dedication, and like oftentimes it's thankless, like, right. But for me, like I came in with the attitude of things are nowhere near perfect, and there's reasons for that, and then there's also like excuses for that, right? And like some things US Archery can't just change because of reasons, right? Like they can't just make safe sport go away. And like, I'm not saying safe sport should go away, but like, right, some of the wristband stuff and all the nonsense, like they don't want to do that either. Like, right. But it's a requirement that they must meet. And so they do it. And, you know, so, but there's other aspects where it's like, you know, just because we've done this way for 10 years, like doesn't mean we need to continue to do this way, and maybe we can do it a better way. Like, right.
Yeah.
And so that's where,
Yeah.
you know, I try to get involved on that level and think of things. And, you know, I know a big area of debate, I guess I wouldn't call it contention, is right. They do want to grow these USATs, and they have thrown out the idea of splitting, you know, the JOAD and the senior master divisions. And it's definitely a hot topic, and people have very different opinions on either side of the fence of that. I don't know how we grow these USATs a bunch without that happening. And my one thing, right, hopefully people listen to this and they make it this far. Right, imagine if at every USAT we could have team and mixed team rounds. Right, because if we had just senior and just JOAD, we could probably do that.
I see.
So right,
so
and
the driving force behind that is to provide a higher level of experience for those international competitors.
Yeah, well, and to grow the events.
And grow the event.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're running like Arizona Cup, we're done. We're out of space. Like,
yes, I've heard that.
Right. We can't, that thing sold out early. They had a bunch of cancellations, right? And they wound up right doing okay, but there were still people that would have shot that event that didn't, because it was sold out. Right. Our other venues are a bit bigger.
Buckeye Stage, yeah. I don't know what Gator Cup looks like.
Gator Cup's not, we have some space, but not a ton, right? Like, so it's all stuff to think about, and it's we could if we were able to split them, right? I think the main people that are on the opposed side, and I'd love to hear people's opinions about this. Like, come talk to me. Like, come talk to your athlete reps. Come talk to most people in U.S. Archery are fairly approachable if they're not in the middle of putting out a fire, right? So, right, the more feedback they can get about things, the better decision they can make. That's best for everybody. And but right, if I was a parent that shot the senior division and I had a child that shot in JOAD, I would absolutely not want them to split it.
Yeah.
What percentage of people that is, I don't know, but I mean, we could have a better schedule for both, you know, JOAD and senior, right? We could shoot, right? We qualify Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and like be out.
Yeah.
I mean, they might be able to get everything in, you know, Saturday, Sunday, do like, I don't know, official practice Friday and then Saturday, Sunday. I don't know. But right, if that could save you a day that you don't have to burn a vacation time, right, and an extra hotel night and all that stuff, like, it'd probably make most people happier.
For sure. So, and hey, the cost of travel isn't getting any cheaper.
No, exactly.
You know, it's just getting, frankly, it's getting worse. So it's going to have an adverse effect in many ways.
Absolutely.
Anyway, stuff they could do. Hey man, I think what we're going to do is we're just going to elect you as the Barebow representative right now, because you're kind of like fringe part of the community now anyways, and you know,
I could do it at least. So
heck yeah. Well, you know, I guess the other part of that, man, is you're taking a approach to the sport. You just correct me if I'm wrong. Like, it's like, just leave it better than you found it. And you're head in to training and becoming an Olympic gold medalist. And like, you're taking a much higher level of personal investment into archery that is well beyond Olympic recurve. It's helping Barebow, and people, I guess it's one of the, and I did not know all of this prior to us recording this podcast, but you know, that came across just through our communication, and now all of Barebow, not all of Barebow, but like those who are frequent, followers of the podcast and stuff, they're going to realize like you are doing much more for Barebow, and you're not a Barebow shooter per se. You've played around with it, but it's, you're representing Barebow in a way that we don't really have anyone that's willing to do that or able to. I mean, I've done it kind of involuntarily working with Rod, and I played a huge role in the USAT thing. That's a long story.
Sure.
That people don't even know about. That was all because that was just all off the out of the limelight, behind closed doors discussions, how, trying to help them like come up with a plan, because nobody knew, like, because they're not Barebow people. And but a lot of people don't know that they think by commenting, some people think by commenting on USA Archery posts complaining that we didn't have Barebow and USAT was going to get us in USAT. That's just not the case.
It's not the way it works.
Not how you do it.
So for for all the Barebow shooters that are going to come and shoot Buckeye, please, like, if you miss the target, don't be embarrassed. Go let somebody know. Like, tell a judge, because at that venue specifically, right?
Yeah,
they comb that field as best as they possibly can, right? Jason and the field crew out there. If they find an arrow out there after that event is done, we are not shooting at that field again, right? They don't want some kid playing soccer the next weekend, slide tackling somebody and getting an arrow jabbed in his thigh. So, right, if you miss the target, make sure you let somebody know. And if you find that arrow, make sure you let somebody know.
If you don't find that arrow, make sure you let somebody know.
Yeah, exactly.
So we had that discussion on a previous episode. I don't remember who I was talking to about it. And it was, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I'll be honest with you, most Barebow people, if they do miss the target, that arrow doesn't sink in far enough for it to get lost. It's not going that fast. And it's hitting this way. But, I mean, it's but yeah, that facility, a lot of people don't know this, like, that facility is ginormous. It's a top-notch facility. And Jason, and I've talked to Jason personally about this, like, they realize, like, they want Barebow to come. They're like, listen, come, bring everybody, but please, everyone understand, like, it is crucial that, like, if you miss an arrow, you can't not look for it, and you can't ignore, like, if you lose it, you can't find it, you have to report it, because it's a field, it's on well-groomed soccer fields, I guess is what it essentially is. And those fields are going to be used immediately after the tournament. So there's there, and I know that was a big point for the Barebow archers out there to understand, like, how difficult it was, and some of the things that we needed to get past in order to get Barebow more involved in a bigger way in the USAT stuff. That was one of them. That was a something that was discussed for multiple venues. Obviously, like, Chula Vista is not an issue, but these other places, and like I said, Buckeye, that they can hold an endless amount of shooters. I think Jason told me, like, some crazy number. I don't know, like 5,000. I don't know.
It's a big facility. So I mean, if you have any doubts, like, put bright pink wraps on your arrows.
Yeah.
Like, literally, I would. Like, my hunting arrows, like, I could see from a mile away. I
have white wraps on mine. Yeah,
do something, help
but I'm glad you brought that up. And that's advocating for Barebow. People don't, like, that's advocating for Barebow. We don't want problems. We don't want issues. We don't want sour grapes. We want to go there. We want to be professional. Don't hoot and holler while people are on the shooting line. That who you are. Like, don't do those things. Try to keep it as professional as possible. Have a good time. Have a great time. Be as loud as you want in between. But
exactly.
there's just, we have to start looking at, with the growth of Barebow that we've had, and unknowingly, thanks to people like yourself advocating for Barebow, you have to start looking at it like we're not just like the redheaded stepchild, pun intended. But we're growing past that. We're a valuable asset now, and we have to realize that we have to have a professional presence in the same time. And stuff like the arrow thing, like that's a professional presence. It's no longer just fun and games. I mean, it is have fun.
No,
game,
I get your point. And that's a good way to think about it. So, there's basically there's ways to get involved, and as deep as you want to get involved, as much work as you want to do, they will let you do the work. So, but I will, I'm curious about that Barebow representation on the athlete council. I don't think it'd be a bad thing.
Well, let's keep in touch. I mean, you got my number. We've been texting about the podcast. Let's look at that a little bit deeper. And if there's a way that I can help, or in any way, obviously I would. But we'll talk about that. We'll hook up at nationals as well and talk about that.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, man. Well, dude, we're like an hour and a half into this thing already. That's crazy.
I told you I talk a lot.
Oh. Yeah. Well, I do too. By nature,
yeah.
The beast. So, all right, man. Well, thanks so much for joining me and having the discussion. I feel like we have so much more that we could probably talk about. We might have to circle back and have another discussion. Maybe we'll wait till after nationals and talk about how things go and whatnot. Make sure you swing down by if you have time. I don't know what your schedule's like, at nationals. Swing down by the Barebow people and just say hey.
Yeah, absolutely. I hang out pretty often, pretty late, and I love watching archery. I kind of see who's still in what matches and stuff. Obviously, I have the closest relationships on the recurve side just because we're around everybody. But I have good friends that shoot compound. I've got some good friends that shoot Barebow, so it's not like I'm I love all archery. Like, I can tune a compound bow, I can tune a recurve bow, I can I've helped some people named Matt Yaka tune their bow. Right? It's all archery, it's all we're searching for, a form that's repeatable and a piece of equipment that is as forgiving as possible, right? So other than that, it's just a stick and a string,
Yeah, buddy. All right, man. Well, listen, you have a good night. Appreciate everything you've done for us. Congratulations on all your accomplishments up to this point. I can't wait to see what your journey includes as you move forward. And as always, if you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. So where can people follow you? What social media are you on? If they want to get in touch with you or whatever, where would that be? What's the best play?
Yeah, it's mainly Instagram. I'm pretty low key. I don't like. I'm pretty lazy there. Like, if I get sent a message on there, I'll answer it. But if I post once a week, that's normally doing pretty good for me. I go through like little phases where it's like a couple in a month, and then I take a vacation. I'm like, oh yeah, I should probably do that. But at Para Archer, with 2 A's in the middle. So Para Archer, is me. And, any tournaments, this year I am trying to bring my medal around to all the USATs. If anybody wants to see it, picture with it, any of that stuff. Obviously not when I'm on the shooting line, but anytime after that, feel free, come on up, say hey. Get a pic, something, I'll sign anything, all that fun stuff.
Awesome. Thanks so much. That's awesome stuff. Appreciate it. Hey, and MJ Rogers, he was in the comments the entire time, and I didn't get to tell you. MJ said, that guy. Yeah, he said, good to see you, Rooster, like early on in the but he said he did comment. He's like, the annual members meeting is open to anyone, and you can speak to the BOG, ask any questions you want. And I said that the athletes will the athlete reps represent all regardless of style of equipment. So for like the people you mentioned, you go to them, they're representatives of all of us, regardless of whether you have someone involved in Barebow or not. So
Gotcha.
So you guys, that means you can see Rooster with your questions and complaints. No, I'm just kidding.
Sentiment, that is my goal, right? I do want to leave archery better than I found it. And so, right, growing Barebow is in part of that mindset for me. So
yeah,
absolutely. I'll do what I can with what I can do,
All right. Well, you have a good night. Thanks again. And we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, for sure. It's fun hanging out.
Yep. See you, Kev. Bye.
See ya. Bye.